So my name is Ryan Hanna. No relation to Rihanna. Okay, I guess that's the singer. But so Pastor Timi met me. Now the world would say by chance. There's God at play. And I got to tell you, coming here for the very first time, you have something very special here. I've been to many churches in my day, in the U.S., in Canada, and there is without question the Spirit of God that emanates in this place. And I'm shaking, actually. I actually had to contain tears. So if I was going to ask for one quick prayer from everybody, even silent, it's just for me to be able to hold it together, because I feel Jesus in this place, the presence. And I can't thank you enough for blessing me, for allowing me to be here. So we're new friends. We just happened to meet. God obviously directed it together. Our kids are friends. I have a daughter, Delaney, she's 15, and Kumi. They're in the same class together in a Christian school here in Winnipeg. And every morning when we go to drop them off, there's a bit of a game that they play. They race to get into the bus to take a specific seat to get to school. And that's how we met, basically. So he was pulled up beside me, rolled down the window. We kind of joked about that. And Pastor jumped into my car, and we started ministering. He's ministered to me. I am certainly not a pastor, and I have never addressed a congregation like this before, ever, in my life. So what I'm going to share is a bit of my testimonial, some lessons and learnings in my life, and then I hope, in a way that's authentic and genuine, Christ-led, bring it back to this notion of all nations, right? All nations under one. And Lydia, you did such an amazing job. Amazing. You were obviously channeling the Word of God through your engagement with us today. I was very much blessed by it. So I'm not sure if you have my presentation. So the notion of finding faith through storms, and we all experience storms of various degrees and various severities throughout our lives. And what you see here, and I hope it comes clear on the image here, that's Jesus reaching through the water, right? Any guess where that comes from? The vocal church, right? Where might that come from? Think Matthew, Mark, and John, where Jesus told the disciples to go out into the water, Sea of Galilee. And in the evening, the storms brewed, picked up, and they were very scared. They were terrified. And then Jesus appeared to them through the storm. They thought he was a ghost. And he calmed the waters. But first, Peter reached out, right? He wanted to go on the water, journey through the water, and he went through it. Why? He had deep fear in his life. He took his eyes off the Lord. He took his eyes off God, Jesus, and he went through. But as soon as he was able to see again and connect, Jesus reaching down, pulled him up and restored him, right? So now, in terms of the storms of life, if you can go to the next slide. So my journey, I call myself a 54-year-old miracle child, okay? And we're all miracle children. When you think of it, right? We are the miracle children of a miracle God, living God. It doesn't matter where we're from, our backgrounds, we are all miracles of God. How do you listen to God? I want to share just some of my insights and how I have grown to know him through trials and tribulations. And then this notion of letting go of the past and having hope for the future as one church under God. So that's everybody, regardless of race, ethnicity, everything, all under one. So if you go to the next screen, I'm going to talk about some different ways God may be talking through or to you, how he has talked to me, and there are many ways. What you see on the screen here is some of the trials and tribulations. It's actually just a snapshot, frankly, of things that have gone on. It almost reads as a bad country song, right? Like my dog has died, that sort of thing. No, I've had some fairly interesting trials and tribulations over my lifetime, and that's why I'm calling myself a miracle child, like we all are. Brandon Lake, if you've ever heard that song, he is a major he's won so many Christian awards now. He has a song called Miracle Child. If you haven't heard that, write that down. and listen to the song. And it's so important to listen to the words of the song. And I have a little snapshot there, and this song has certainly resonated with me. And we all have had, again, trials and tribulations. So I should. Song you can watch. You don't have to buy it. You can go on YouTube. You can go on whatever media you look at, and you can see that song. It is a beautiful song that I hope will speak to you deeply. Now, my hope too, as well, is I don't know if my message is going to resonate. I'm just kind of acting on faith that it might reach one or two of you, and if it does, then I hope. My hope is that it impacts in some way positively in your life, even just to pause and get you to think a little bit. Now, that's a list of things that have happened to me, so from a very young age. And I'm going to center in on three elements that are highlighted. One was a boating accident. One was a car accident where I was hit by a freight train. And another one was when I was 52, just a couple years ago, I had COVID and ended up with an MI, which is a myocardial infarction, and I have a healthcare background. That's my background. So that's a heart attack. So which threw me totally off. These are the trials and tribulations that can come. So next slide. So the verse that I would like to anchor this on beyond, again, Jesus being in the storms, and the passages represented and seen as a testament to eyewitness in Matthew, John, and Mark, is under Jesus' words with John, where he says, in the world you will have tribulations, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So that's kind of the core thing to bear in mind. Again, we all have tribulations, and Jesus is there along the way with us through it, regardless of the magnitude. Whether we actually recognize that fact or not is the thing. But there's believers here. You know that Jesus is with you along the way. So a few ways. Now, actually, why do we experience storms? Now, Pastor Timmy, you could probably do an entire sermon on this, right? So why do we experience storms? I don't have all the answers here for sure. You know, I've done a lot of research on the net and whatnot and tried to understand, why do we experience storms as Christians? Why do these things happen? And in some cases, I do believe that it's based upon what we may do, right? In terms of our decisions, where we may have fallen away from Christ. In some cases, things just happen. It could be the enemy being involved. I'm not sure where the music's coming from, but it's okay. Am I standing too close to a monitor? And then the notion of why we experience storms, for me, it actually has brought me closer to God. If you can see these storms for what they may be, God is carrying us and taking us through the storm. It actually gets you closer to God, closer to Jesus. Because it's usually when we're at our lowest points, we reach out the strongest, sadly, right? So some of the ways that God may speak to us, how he's spoken to me, obviously the first thing is the living word. So it's the Bible. So making sure you read the Bible. If you're not able to do that effectively because of impairment with eyes, whatever, there's lots of different ways you can read the Bible, right? Or watch the Bible. This might be causing it. So the living word, through prayer. My prayer has evolved for sure over time, and probably at too late of an age, I've recognized that it's not just asking for needs, things, right? It's about being genuinely, like having an attitude of gratitude, being very gracious and thanking God for the blessings, regardless of what they may be, whether it be the meal in front of you or the roof over your head. It's all of those things. So being very faithfully gracious and have gratitude for what we're given in this world. The screen went blank up there. Through God's creation. So with God's creation, you see it as you're sitting by a creek as you walk, as you see the mountains. Right? For me, I'm in a science background. I actually see the fingerprint of God at the smallest level, at the cellular level, at the microscopic level of molecules. It is unbelievable. Without question, you have all faith, but when you dig really deep down, you see God in the smallest details as well. And then, of course, through other believers. I think actually that's how we met. I really do. Pastor Rotimi and I, we met as believers, and this opportunity that he has provided to me to possibly impact one or two of you. Through music, that's a big thing for me. I love the music that I saw here today. It was fantastic. I actually was a drummer for many, many years. And the worship team did a fantastic job. So music is a big thing. That's why I had that Brandon Lake reference at the beginning, Miracle Child. And then through circumstances. Now I want to share with you a few circumstances that have impacted my life profoundly. And I hope that none of you actually would have to go through this, okay, to strengthen your faith. If you move to the next slide, you'll see a slide with some pictures of those different instances that I have encountered in my life. So my family actually is at the middle there, the two middle pictures. On the lower side, you see my family. I've been blessed by a wonderful family, Christ followers, all of them. My wife is my rock. She is everything to me, and she helps guide me. She's just an amazing, amazing partner in life for me. My two daughters, Halen and Delaney. Delaney is the friend with Kumi, of course. My older daughter is 19, and my youngest is 15. Now, in terms of the pictures, so you see a few pictures there. The top one at the left-hand corner is a boat, capsized. And I want to share how God has communicated with me. So I was 16 at the time, and I was at a Christian camp that one is at Lac du Bonnie, that particular camp. And as part of the camp, we would go out and we'd go boating, right? So we went individually boating. They had these little boats that we'd go on individually, and they taught you how to boat, they taught you how to water ski and things like that. I went out about 150 yards, and it was a little too calm out there for boating. So I kind of jumped out, and I'd swim it out, jump back in the boat, and suddenly, oddly, a weird wind caught the sail. I lost balance, fell in the water, and the boom came across like that, the big mast in the middle, and hit me square in the head, knocked me out cold in water. I was under the mast, under the sail, completely. And all I remember is going dark and black, and then suddenly I'm opening my eyes, and that is what I saw. I was above, and I get emotional even thinking about it to this day. I was above, and I could see the sail. Now, I don't know if that was just in my mind, because it was total silence. And I looked over to my left and towards the shore, which is about 150 yards away, and what I saw was people congregating, pointing out. And I saw a camp counselor who was also serving as a lifeguard get some stuff together, and he started to go into the water and swim out. And then God spoke. It's funny, we pray, and that's seen as very normal. When you actually hear the voice of God, the world thinks you're nuts. So I actually heard him spoke, "Ryan, awaken my child." I went black, and then I woke up under the water with a sail against my face. I was totally disoriented, not knowing where I was. I got out from under the sail, and the lifeguard was swimming towards me, and we went in. And oddly, I was fine. I have no idea how long I was under the water. There's different types of drowning. Two major types is dry and wet drowning. And again, I have a medical background. Wet drowning is when you get water in your lungs. That's usually when you're knocked out underwater. 95%, between 85 and 90% of drownings are that way. You drown because you have water filling your lungs. I didn't have anything like that, even though I was knocked out in water. It was honestly a true miracle. And I was so shaken that I actually heard what I know to be the voice of God. And it was totally calming. It was cutting through the silence. Said my name, Ryan, awaken my child. And I woke up. The second major thing that impacted my life was the lower one. See that car wreck there? I was going to work. I was working in the Bethesda Hospital in Steinbach, and I was driving out first thing in the morning. And I noticed it was actually very similar weather to what we have now. It was late November. The roads were slippery, really slippery. I noticed a train and the lights were going. It started to come across, and I applied my brakes. Thinking that I would have more than enough time, I hit black ice. So it's deadly ice. You can't see it until you're on it. Somehow it gripped, and as I was going towards this train coming across, I'm thinking, if I hit this, I'm dead. I'm gone. I ditched the car. I don't know where the traction came from, but I was able to ditch the car. It was even worse. It was a skating rink in the ditch. I went through the ditch, up, and landed right on the top of the train tracks with my driver door facing the train, barreling down at at the highway speed. Unbelievable experience. But what was interesting, I said, Jesus, Lord, save me. That's all I could get out. Sorry. In that moment, somehow I got into the passenger side. I was about 240 pounds at that time. I got into the passenger side compartment and was in there as the train hit. And I also heard, this is the second time and only the second time I've heard this. I've heard, I am with you. Echo, I am with you. And oddly, it was the same voice that I heard 13 years prior when I was in that boat. Unbelievable faith reaffirming. Believe me with that. Unbelievable. The train stopped. I was blown right off the tracks. That was basically the effect we saw. The conductor came up and the engineer. He actually was very upset. He had tears in his eyes. I got out on the driver's side window. All the windows were destroyed, busted out. I got out and I walked up the train tracks. And he said, he's dead, isn't he? A week and a half prior, that poor engineer hit a family of 4 in Ontario and killed them instantly on tracks, very similar to my situation. I said, I'm the driver. I crawled out. He couldn't believe it. He said, absolute miracle. It's incredible. I hit you at full force, square on, but he noticed one thing. My driver's side, where I saw the train coming, the big lights expanding and the honking of the horn, he said he saw me shift forward in the car. My car advanced forward to hit me on the back of the driver. So behind in the passenger side, I had a four-car door. Hit me, blew my car almost in half, flicked me way down the train tracks. He couldn't believe it. Now here's the amazing thing. Being in Christ's bubble, experiencing this, and what I mean is safety. He has me, he has all of us in the palm of his hand, is that I was completely unharmed. I walked out with no injury whatsoever. I noticed a little sliver that evening of glass in my finger. That's it. I was a little bit stiff. Unbelievable. It was a miracle that I survived that. Few quick other things. So in those two situations, God actually spoke to me. And I pray at something, you don't have to go through that, but I pray that God will actually speak to you and you hear his voice audibly. The middle two. God speaks through his voice, through his word. I gave some. There's many. And again, Pastor Timi could go through with a whole list of ways God speaks to you. When I Googled it, they said there was 14 core ways. I only captured a few there. There's some involving my family too. When I was, my family, we were at the lake, and my daughter, Delaney, the younger one, Kumi's friend, there was a kid a few doors down that was target shooting with a .22. And for some reason, he trained his eye on a little squirrel off a tree and shot. The bullet went right through my clothing and grazed my daughter in the side of the head right by the temple. If it hit her square on, she'd be dead. No question. Unbelievable. Again, it's just, I look at all the situations. When you listen for God, I'll actually share a science element to it. God made our brains with what's called the RAS, reticular activating system. Have you ever heard of this? RAS, reticular activating system? Yes, it's absolutely proven in psychology, in neuroscience. It allows you to focus on areas to bring about outcomes. It allows you to focus and recognize and basically ignore the clutter. So it's essentially something, a tool that God has embedded in us to allow us to be clear and see things, right? I'll give you an example. If you're super hungry and you're going down one of the streets in Winnipeg, one of the main streets, Winnipeg, like Main Street or maybe Pembina Highway. If you're hungry, what do you start noticing right away? McDonald's, Tim Hortons, all the A&W, they all just start popping out. That's your RAS, reticular activating system at play, right? If you're in an airport, it's amazing through all the noise and clutter, all the distractions. God made this system so that you won't go nuts, frankly, for lack of a better word. It allows you to pick out the most relevant information. You can train this as well to recognize God, to listen to Him, the RAS system. You can look that up after. My daughter, this is a major trial and tribulation, something that we faced. My wife and I, when we decided to have a family, we tried and we had a series of miscarriages early, and it was heartbreaking. And then we finally had a pregnancy that seemed to work. And we were well into the second trimester, and we had to go for imaging, where they just assess the baby. They see how is it developing and all that. We went into the imaging center at Health Sciences Center, and they did their imaging scans, and then they suddenly went quiet. The technician left, a specialist came in, medical specialist. We have horrible news, unfortunately. Your baby seems to have, actually, I'll correct that. They used the word fetus at that time. And that's interesting. You know, when they propose certain things, they use the word fetus as if it's not a child of God. Seems to have stopped in its development of its brain 4 to 6 weeks ago. Heartbreaking. We will proceed to book a DNC. A DNC is dilation and cartilage. It's basically a medical abortion. It said the chances of her even coming to full term is slim to none. Thank you. To come to full term is slim to none. If she is born, most likely be stillborn. And by a miracle, if she's born, she will be severely handicapped, not even functional. That's her right there on the top screen. That's Helen. Now, so that's my daughter Helen. Now here's the thing. What is fascinating is that in this particular case, my daughter, and in the translation of the records, somehow they had the date wrong when they were doing the scan. They transposed a date that was 5 to 6 weeks later than she really was in her second trimester of development. Now, when we went home, we really struggled because we don't believe in abortion. We had faith that something must come through, but we were scared to death. We were absolutely scared to death. We said, no, Jesus, we'll leave it up to you. If it's stillborn, if our baby's stillborn, we'll try again. We'll keep going until we have healthy children. But we had Helen, who, yeah. Here's the crazy thing in the way God works. It almost seems like this was a generational thing. My wife on the bottom left, her name is Jeanette. Again, the love of my life. She shouldn't have been in the world herself. Years prior, 31 years prior, her mom, my mother-in-law, was told to have a DNC because her fetus, the baby, was breaking apart. She was bleeding. It looked like it was a complete and utter miscarriage. She was an extremely strong woman of faith. She prayed. She had this nudge. No, I can't do this. My wife was born completely healthy, and that was into the second trimester. Same thing, in the same vein, right? So, again, these are some of the ways that God has spoken and revealed to me without question. He carries me through these hardships, through these storms. The last one was very recent. That's a hospital. I had, because I work in healthcare, I'm often in hospitals and clinics. And I was, let's see, this was in January 2022. And in that time, prior to that, I had COVID 3 times. Well, yeah, I've had a total of 5 times. 2 times I didn't have one symptom. I was what they call asymptomatic. But one time I cleared out. I was getting better. It took a few weeks to rebound. Then February 9th, on my daughter's birthday, Delaney's birthday, February 9th, I woke up at 3:32 in the morning with chest pain. And everybody in here, note the signs and symptoms, because God is talking to you. If you ever have these, please trust me on this. I used to be a paramedic. I have a lot of medical training. In terms of what I experienced, I had pain in the chest, in the back, shooting into the jaw. I had all the classic symptoms of a heart attack. Pain in the shoulder. I was gray and sweaty. This was 3:30 in the morning. I got into the hospital. Within about 40 minutes, the ambulance took me in. And I was 52 at the time. It's like, wow, I'm so young. No, it happens. I believe God was speaking through this to me again. I had a lot of time to pray. And what happened is the cardiologist, they're called interventional cardiologists. He worked on my chest, put some stents in. He noticed something, though, in one of my major blood vessels that feeds my heart up top. Have you ever heard of the widowmaker? Widowmaker? Okay, it's a major blood vessel that feeds your heart muscle. I had an occlusion and a structural deformity. He said, if you didn't get in, you would have been dead in 6 to 8 months. Flat out. So, again, through these storms, it actually saved me. It saved my life. I do see my time's up, so I want to make sure the service continues to run. If you go to the last slide. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. It's in Romans. Remember that one. When in doubt, cry out to Jesus. Should be praying every day. I wake up in the morning, and actually, it might sound corny, I say, good morning, Jesus. And then I have some prayers that go through my head. I invite you to try that, actually. Good morning, Jesus. In the early Christian church, they actually were mandated to pray 7 times a day. 7 times a day, right? It should be continuous in a way. Every moment where you encounter something, just talk like a relationship. So letting go. This relates back to the nations of the world. We all have baggage. We all have storms that we go through. I personally believe, and you can vouch in Scripture, I believe that the enemy wants you to hold on to this stuff because it distracts you and pulls you down. There's a saying that being in a rut, being in that negative space, right, unfocused on God, is like a grave with the ends kicked out. It's no place to be. Jesus does not want us living in the past. The racism that you may have received, that you may have, it's evil. Recognize it for what it is. We are all one nation under God. We may have come from different parts of the world, but we're one nation under God, regardless of who we are or our background. Trust God in the storm. That's the last thing. Please trust God in the storm. Reach out to Him, talk to Him, and recognize what He may be teaching you through it. Right? My time is done. Sorry for going over. But thank you so much for allowing me to share with you, and I look forward to after.